Hello, selectors, and welcome back to the Life Burst Podcast. We're talking about the prismatic diva centers that you could be running right now if you wanted to, and just sort of like the best builds you can be running with them, as well as just talking about the centers in general. This one is Midoriko. You can tell that I'm struggling with that name every time I say it. Nope, it's Midoriko. There you go. Midoriko, which is actually kind of a cool green center. It's not quite as powerful as I'd like it to be. It's just lacking maybe a hair in power. But it's a cool option that hasn't really been available in Wixoss up to this point. I mean, Bang did it a little bit, Sanga did it a little bit, but I think this one actually does hit the nail on the head in terms of what it's doing. Midoriko is got a very interesting ability for green. It's pretty unusual. Green doesn't normally get this type of ability, or maybe it does in the old Wecross, and I just uninformed by it. But it has the enter ability of take 3 cards from your hand and put them into the enter zone. Point blank, this is not great. You never really want to be taking cards from your hand and putting them in the enter zone. Yeah, you can stash them there, and you could argue that in a discard meta, those cards were not going to be in your hand anyway, so you might as well stash them in the enter zone instead. Like, just basically convert the one resource into another. But you wouldn't gain resources. You don't necessarily want to convert them. But if you see this type of ability, it means that you probably want some amount of card draw to maximize this ability, so that way your card draw then becomes free enter, and at that point it's a little less embarrassing than taking your 5-card hand, dropping to 2 cards, and having a lot of enter but no cards in hand to use that enter with. The other abilities, however, are actually quite fine. The action ability of once per turn, you can target a Signy on your field and it gets plus 5,000 power till end of turn. Means that you're going to be just Signy buffing a little bit every turn. There are a certain amount of green cards and a certain amount of red cards that care about that kind of thing that you can utilize. I wouldn't go ham on it because, again, you're only targeting 1 Signy per turn. I find a lot of times deck builders will see that to be like, oh yeah, that means I can run all of the Signy buffing stuff. That's not true. You really shouldn't. You should be running like a couple key ones that you're like, every turn I'm looking to buff this Signy because it'll help me out. So I'm going to run 7 cards that have this sort of ability on it. The last one is its once per game ability, which arguably is actually its best ability, which is for the low, and it's actually kind of high cost of colorless green. That's a lot of green there. You can put all of the cards in your enter zone into the trash. If you do, the opponent puts 1 card from their enter zone to the trash for each card you've put into the trash this way. And then you will take all of the opponent's Signies on the field and put them into the trash. This is arguably a bit of a spiritual successor to Bang, because it not only enter burns, which is actually pretty cool here and actually a pretty good trade for what you're doing, but it also will... it'll also trash your opponent's Signy, which is enter burn, right? One of the things that red struggles with all the time is it wants to enter burn, but at the same time it also gives enter to the opponent by vanishing the opponent's Signies. So it's sort of like biting its own hand, or I guess shooting its own foot is what I should have said there. I don't know why you would bite your own hand, but I guess if you're biting your own hand, this is a message from Life First Podcast. If you're biting your own hand, please stop it. So here's the goal with this deck, right? Point blank. You're going to want to draw cards. You're going to want to have some amount of team buff, which is usually in red and green, and you're going to want to supplement some of your amount of opening lanes here and trashing the Signy with the ability to probably enter burn and also vanish a bit more so you can be a little bit more aggressive. All of this means if you're thinking, oh, that sounds like blue, white, red... Sorry, blue, green, red, then you're right. That's the color combo for this. I can't really imagine this card in many other color combos. I'm sure you could pack white into it, but then you get to a more of attrition game, which is a lot of what all these other green decks are doing. I don't think Midoriko does that really well. I think she's at her best when she's punching damage in and trying to win before the opponent really has a chance to catch back up with the amount of lane opening and enter burning that the deck can be doing. Now, this deck, I've been trying to make this deck exist in Wecross for a long time. We originally, actually, the first deck that we ever won our locals with was a deck very similar to this type of archetype. I tried to make it work in Bang before I ended up going into more of a a attrition archetype for green, and Ott arguably also was more of this, but then kind of also was a little bit more of a tempo deck. But this archetype that I'm beating around the bush of saying is basically Stompy. The idea that you're just sort of shouldering your way through and dealing damage to your opponent. You're trying to ignore what they're doing, and you're kind of this bigger version of aggro. It almost sometimes people call it big aggro, or something like a big red in Magic. Often is what it's called. But the idea is that you're just playing really strong Signy on their own that can maybe trample over your opponent's effects. And you're just trying to sort of get to the end goal as quickly, and not as quickly as possible, but like you don't, because like unlike other aggro, which maybe there's going to be blockers in your way, if we're going to use this football analogy, and they'll crumple under that, and instead they'd rather sprint to the goal and not have anyone catch this. This deck doesn't really care if the opponent catches them. In fact, it's just going to shoulder them and push them into the end zone with itself and score the goal. That's what it's trying to do. It's trying to give that stompy feel again. I played quite a lot of it with this, so I know the ins and outs of Stompy, so I know a little bit of while this looks like a hot mess, it actually performs a lot better than you'd expect. Going into the assists, which I think are kind of the most important part of this deck to understand how it supports the Midoriko. We've got Tamago Beating at the front end. This again is also more Enter Denial. Being able to put something on the bottom of the opponent's deck means that it's one less enter that you need to worry about. But you follow it up with Tamago Jetstick, which draws you cards, an X Echo, which draws you cards, and X Crossfire, which enter burns your opponent. So as you can see, there's enter burning here, technically, enter starving, enter resource, whatever, resource denial stuff. And there's more enter resource denial here on X's front, plus the amount that you're going to be getting for Midoriko. So, and I know what you guys might be saying is, but Andrew, you're getting the draw cards here for the enter, and that's going to give you some amount of enter, which is great, don't get me wrong, but you want more enter, so you can always burn out your opponent here. Yes, that's true, you are correct about that. However, green cards, what they lack really in anything else is the fact that they lack a lot of push. So we make up for that by making up for it here. Basically, this is where a lot of the power comes from, and the green in the deck is mostly of your enter charging that's going to get you that extra enter for that ability. So we've got the two. This is actually really, really strong. Green, red, blue has a very, very strong piece here called Ancient Echo, which is used often if you were a Ancient Surprise team. But the thing is, it's not actually team specific, it's color specific. Getting the ability to vanish a Signy for 2 enter, drawing 2 cards is reminiscent of Summer Lives Blues, which is one of the best cards that you could be playing in Recross. And then you get the benefit of also being able to add 3,000 power to your entire team, which that does matter for some of these cards. Not all of them, but it does help here. And does help support your team pump with your center as well. The last one is Colorful Ensemble. You could make this Energy Door. I could hear an argument for Energy Door, and I wouldn't disagree with it. But I wanted to try something a little bit more different, and I actually kind of like what this does. Freezing the opponent's Elrig gives you a couple more chances to attack than you would normally have against other mid-range and control decks. And then giving your target level 3 or more Assassin also helps again with that enter denial that we were talking about. Assassin is in essence enter denial because you're dealing a damage to them, but you're not giving them the resource that was that Signy in front of it. Moving right along, let's talk about our main deck. So we have a enter charge package core that we're utilizing here. We're utilizing 3 Bang, we're utilizing 3 Chirin, then we are utilizing also 2 Fennec here. So we've got plenty of ways to enter charge that allow you to get a little bit more oomph than just doing this. If you wanted to add a spell or two in order to enter charge a little bit more, yeah, sure, you could do that. I think Bookmark is a very reasonable choice to add to this if that's something you wanted. But you'll also know there's a lot of life bursts here that enter charge as well. So we've got, I believe this is an enter charge here. Yeah, you can choose to enter charge as well as this is an enter charge up here. So you've got a fair amount of enter charge, a little more than you'd expect, and these two do a lot of work that people don't quite expect. Converting more cards in from your hand into enter is really strong. And because we've got so many ways to get enter, right, we're also using ways to use that enter. So we're using a core of 3 Parajulius and 2 Osagetsune. We're at least always going to have one trigger from our center itself to turn these on. So they're going to be pretty good choices, as well as Osagetsune helps out a little bit more at the team pump itself. So speaking about the team pump, let's talk about what the team pump enables in essence. Drawing an extra card with Thoroughbred is one of the things that it enables. Another one is Tanguzara. This allows you to not be downed by your opponent's effects. That includes Madoka Clap, which is almost omnipresent. Yes, you could be using the enter that you get to also gain Assassin if its power is 15k or more. In practice, you don't very much use it, but it is an option, and that's something worth mentioning for sure. Hamster is an interesting one that is underutilized by decks that I think gain power. If this power is 8,000 or more, which is quite easy to hit when you're 5,000 power plus 5,000 power, but also you've got other ways to make 3,000 power happen, so you can pretty easily get into 8,000 power. You can vanish something on the opponent's field with power 3,000 or less. A lot of Signy on the opponent's field is going to be power 3,000 or less now that we're in this rise of 2,000 and 3,000 power utility Signy. And there is ways to get yourself up to 12k with this Signy as well. The 5k gets you pretty close. Then all you need to do is add a Osagetsune bump to it, or a Ancient Echo bump, or plenty of different ways to do it. If you do, you end up getting yourself the ability to vanish 8,000 or less for free, by the way, when you attack, which is quite strong. The rest of it is just some amount of stuff here. I also have added a little bit more team pump here with the Mel. This probably could be other level 1 greens if you want. I liked it at here as such, just because I want to maintain a certain amount of green. The last team pump thing that you could do is the Fennec Phantom Terror Beast. So Fennec is actually kind of one of those cool ones where it appreciates team pumps on other Signy. Basically, you pump up your other Signy and then you mirror those pumps with Fennec. But it also doesn't mind seeing another 15k getting attacked, and then you just go ahead and enter charge 1 off of that too. And this is something that you can do multiple turns in a row, which is actually pretty nice. So there's many different ways to do it. You'll see there's a light Terror Beast package in here as well, with Thoroughbred, Tamaranian, what is it? Yeah, Tasmanian, the Fennec, and the Tanguzara, as well as the Hamster. Again, also, you can remove things with Hamster by using Thoroughbred's team pump as well, plus being able to get something back out of your trash, although you're probably going to get Tanguzara with that more than anything else. Other than that, you've got yourself a Yuzuki. This is another enter burn tactic. It's not going to be... There's 4 here. You really don't need that many. I just was lacking level 1 reds that I really wanted to use, so I just put 4 Yuzuki in there. If you guys figure out something else that you like better, please feel free to use it. I think you'd need to at least have 3 Yuzuki, so probably one of those could go and turn into something else. But the last one is Contempora. I think Contempora is one of the best green level 3s that you could be running nowadays. Being able to give stuff Shadow level 1 and level 2 is really good against, for example, Atoms and Oganas and things like that are running around, as well as a bunch of other aggro decks that rely on that type of thing. Plus, it helps you with the discard matches by being able to pay an enter and then getting it back from your trash to your hand. Overall, I think if you want some kind of deck where you are like turning off your brain a little bit and then just punching your way forward and really just ignoring what your opponents do, this is the deck for you. I actually also think this deck is pretty good for people who are new to Wixoss, because you don't exactly need to know what you will need to do against your opponents in order to play it. If you know your deck well enough and you know your deck's cards, then you can kind of just make your way through a game without really caring what your opponents are doing or what their opponents' cards are, which I think is kind of a nice answer to this type of deck. Like, this is a kind of a deck that potentially, if you're new to the game and you want to bring something that you aren't going to need to second guess what your opponents are doing at a high level event, maybe Ceremony or something, this could be the ticket for that. Let me know what you guys think. It's been my quest to try to make Stompy work in Wixoss for a very long time. I think this center is actually a very, very smart way to do it.